My name is Jenny Hatfield, as you may have gathered thus far. I'd now like to officially welcome you to the 11th Annual West Coast Global Forum, Equality, the Time is Now. And we have a little exclamation point over the now. It's great to see the room filled to honor this year's global citizens who are being recognized for their contributions to bringing the scales of gender equality into balance. We have had an overwhelming response this year and have had to work with the endowment to provide additional space down the hall for our overflow audience who will be able to view the program via live streaming, which is a first for us this year. So I hope some of you who did get our emails notified your friends and the people in your organization so that they can tune in and watch as we go along. In addition to our global citizens, I would like to recognize some special guests who are here with us today. First of all is Natalie Africa. And Natalie, if you'll just stand so everybody can see you. She is our keynote speaker and panel moderator from the UN Foundation on the East Coast, so she flew out last night to be with us. We have a couple of members from the LA Consular Corps with us. I'm not sure they're both here. Danielle de Bruin Grady, she is Consul General of South Africa. And we have Aung So Win, who's the Consul General of Myanmar. I'm not sure if he's here. Perhaps he'll come in a little later. We also have a representative from the LA County Office of Protocol. They have been our partners for years doing this, and they provide us with all the diplomatic and consular corps lists that we use every year. And that's Ernestine Rhine. Ernestine? Yeah, thank you. We have a representative from Mayor Eric Garcetti's Office of Sustainability. She is the Conrad Hilton Fellow on the Sustainable Development Goals, Erin Bromagen. And we have two former global citizens with us. I think we have only two. If I missed one, please shout out. Sylvia Wetlock from Rotary. And writer, producer, and director and all-around women's advocate, Ellen Snortland. Ellen, where are you? Oh, there she is. Lee Adams, I'm sorry. I see. Yay. You shouted it. Anybody else? Anybody else? Okay, sorry. Although his schedule precluded him from being with us this afternoon, LA Mayor Eric Garcetti, a strong advocate for gender equality, wanted to send his personal greetings.
Hello, I'm Mayor Eric Garcetti, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to the 11th Annual UN Association's West Coast Global Forum. I'd like to begin by congratulating this year's Global Citizen Award recipients, leaders who have made progress in the pursuit of gender equality. The American Association of University Women, Pauline Field, the founder of 50/50 Leadership, and producer Emmanuel Etier. Here in Los Angeles, gender equity isn't just an issue area. It's a value that guides all that we do. When I took office, I brought together our city leadership and made clear we needed to desegregate the work of gender equity so we could all own it. And today, for the first time in city history, Los Angeles has achieved gender parity on its 41 boards and commissions. Because we know our city is stronger when we harness everyone's talent and deliver opportunities to everyone. That's why we are one of the first cities to adopt the UN's Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, and why we are committed to the Sustainable Development Goals, including SDG's 5 different promises on gender equality and empowerment. Thank you for joining us in this amazing work and for your commitment to building a more equitable world.
You know, the mayor is very familiar with the United Nations Association and our global forum, and joined in our celebration several years ago when we honored his father, Gil Garcetti, the former LA City attorney. As his message says, he puts his commitment to gender equality into practice. I would like now to call up to the stage Jane Runnels-Poole, who will sing a very special song. It's sort of the unofficial UNA song. It's called Here's to All Who Love. There are copies of it, I think, on each table. It's written by probably the oldest UNA member in the country, Marcia Hunt. Many of you remember her as a stage, screen, TV personality who was more or less blacklisted in the 50s. She became a very strong supporter and worked as a UN ambassador for many years, and also was a member of my own UNA chapter, the San Fernando Valley. So she's going to be 101 in October. We invited her here today, but unfortunately, every day brings new challenges for Marcia, so she couldn't be with us today. But I'd like to have Jane come up and give us a little taste of Marcia's work.
Good afternoon, everyone. So as you see, we have her song, Here's to All Who Love. The way we're gonna do this is I'm gonna sing the first time around, one pass at the music, and then we're gonna a second time join it together, and I'll invite you all to sing with me in the song. Here's to all the lovers, here's to all who love. Never mind their genders, their love will rise above. Here's to the joy and tenderness it brings, hope that soars on high wings and sings. Yes, here's to all the lovers, down with those who hate. Down with all that censors so biased and irate. But once there's acceptance, here comes that dove, with peace to all the lovers and peace to those who love. Everyone, please join me. Here's to all the lovers, here's to all who love. Never mind their genders, their love will rise above. Here's to the joy and tenderness it brings, hope that soars on high wings and sings. Yes, here's to all the lovers, down with those who hate, down with all that censors so biased and irate. But once there's acceptance, here comes that dove, with peace to all the lovers and peace to those who love.
I hope you've had some maybe stimulating and thoughtful experiences, and you're ready to sort of share those. So I'm going to call Barry up to the stage. Here he is. And he's going to take it from here.
So first of all, let's give a big hand to Ginny for putting this event together with her committee. And what about another round of applause for that beautiful rendition from Jane Poole? Thank you, Jane. So I happen to be the president. I'm going to turn this so we're like turning towards everybody a little bit. Ugh. Okay, just got my workout. So I'm president of the UNA of Southern California Division. We work with the 12 chapters throughout Southern California to educate and advocate on behalf of the work of the UN and the Sustainable Development Goals. How many of you, by raising your hands, are not members of the United Nations Association? Okay, excellent. So about half, a little less than half of the room. When we first did this event, about 3/4 of the room, about 1/4 of the room were members, I should say that. And most of the people at that time had never heard of the UN Association. So we're making progress in our name recognition and getting the word of the UN and the importance of the UN and the UN Association here in Southern California. Today's event is the 11th annual West Coast Global Forum. We started with about 50 people, 45 or 50 people at the first one 11 years ago. And fortunately or unfortunately, today we have overflow. And so first of all, for the people in the overflow room, thank you very much for being cooperative, and we appreciate your cooperation in being in the overflow room. And hopefully this live streaming is working not just across the way, but around the world. And so for all of those of you that are around the world, hello and welcome. Thanks for being with us. Okay. So today we actually are talking about equality. The time is now. And it's really almost more about let's raise up that part of the population that really has been holding us all together and gives birth to all of us, but are continued to be slighted in most areas of our world. And so today we really recognize the women for the difference that has been made and is possible to be made going forward. And I'm reminded of a quote from former Secretary General Ban Ki-moon and one of our previous Global Forum award recipients, Lee Adams, actually has this as part of her signature. Women hold up more than half the sky and represent much of the world's unrealized potential. They are the educators, they raise the children, they hold families together and increasingly drive economies. They are natural leaders. We need their full engagement in government, business, and civil society. That's a quote from Ban Ki-moon. And there couldn't be any truer words. Just a couple of days ago, I saw an email from Jennifer Seibel Newsom, recognizing August 26th, just a few days ago, as Women's Equality Day. And she wrote that Women's Equality Day marks the 19th anniversary of the 19th Amendment being adopted, which granted many women the right to vote. She underscored many women because many women weren't allowed to vote even with that, especially people of the Black community, until the Civil Rights Amendments, until the Civil Rights Bill. So, go figure, almost a century since women's suffrage, we're having to still take the streets again today to stop Supreme Court nominees and protect women's rights. It just makes her think, as she said, it makes us all think, maybe if we had more women and feminist allies in our government, we wouldn't have to keep fighting these battles at all. She ends by saying, so this November, let's pledge to use the most powerful tool we have to make equality a reality. Let's all make sure that not just we in California vote, but we have all of our friends and relatives in other states vote as well. Okay, so having said that, we still live in a time when it's still a lot of unfairness out there. 70% of women are in the workforce, but 60% are in low-paying, minimal-paying jobs. In other workplace issues, full-time female workers make just 72% of what a male counterpart makes. Women make up 15.7% of corporate officers at the top 500 firms, but represent only 21% of the current president's cabinet, and only represent 21% of the cabinet. And I think that's actually a lower number, a significantly lower number in this administration. Women own or run businesses that generate in excess of $4 trillion. In other economic areas, the average woman's 401k is $11,000 versus the average man's 401k of $25,000, more than double. 75% of all elderly Americans in poverty are women. Between 30 and 50% of female high school students report having already experienced teen dating violence. 81% of 8th graders through 11th graders have experienced some form of sexual harassment. This just is not satisfactory. It just isn't satisfactory. And you know, it's mind-boggling how this continues and continues and continues. So we're here today to honor and recognize several people, men and women, that have committed their lives to empowering women all over the world. And our keynote speaker today, I'm very thrilled with Natalie Africa to be here, Senior Director of Global Health and Private Sector Engagement from the UN Foundation. She has an amazing background. She previously headed the Secretariat of the Business Call to Action, a business platform aimed at driving innovative, inclusive business models. She's previously served as a diplomat of the South African Department of Foreign Affairs. She holds a BA in history from the University of Jean Moulin III in Lyon, France, and an MA from the Graduate Institute of International and Development Studies in Geneva. So we have a really top caliber group of people today. I'm thrilled that all of you are here today. And let's just take a moment, and and you could raise your hand. Who is here? I'll be introducing Natalie more formally in just a moment, but who is here that would like to share something about your organization or why you're here, what you're up to that makes a difference, why you're committed to making a difference, what's important to you that has you be here today? And we'll raise your hands, and we'll come out there with a microphone and get some comments. Do we have a wireless? So, who would like to share something? Well, let's see. Okay, thank you, Tech Daddy. Yeah. Let's hear it for Ken Gruberman, our Tech Daddy. Thank you, Ken. We'll start here and then we'll work our way back.
Yes. Hi, my name is Ellen Snortland, and I've been a UNA member since I was 8 years old because my parents signed me up then. I'm here because I have devoted my life to the empowerment of women and girls. I am the author of a book called Beauty Bites Beast and a documentary I've just made called Beauty Bites Beast. And I will never be able to unsee what happens when you teach girls and women how to set boundaries with people who are threatening them with force. And I will keep doing this until I'm 6 feet under. And that's all she wrote.
And if you have not yet seen Ellen's film, Beauty Bites Beast, or you want a screening at your organization or your church or synagogue or your community organization, contact me and I'll put you in touch with Ellen. It's a remarkable film. And when you see women that of any size, you don't have to be, what struck me was you don't have to be a big, strong, muscular person to learn how to protect yourself. And as the movie points out, you know, boys learn how to tussle and wrestle and fight, so to speak. Little girls don't. They're taught to still be pretty and put on, I don't know, just be sweet and things like that. And this movie really illustrates how women of any size can learn to protect themselves physically and what that provides for them in confidence in all areas of your life. It's like holographic how it shows up across their life. Okay, next person. So check with Ellen's movie.
Yes, my name is Ray, and I'm the executive director of the Women's City Club of Pasadena, which Pauline is a president of, and many of our members are here as well. We provide a safe place for women to collaborate and to connect and create a community together. And there's not a day in our house that women aren't impacting each other's lives, and free to do it without any of the restrictions that exist in other places. So we do this daily. It's fun.
Thank you for being here. We'll work our way back here. Excuse me. Tanya?
I'm Tanya Flores, and I'm with Project Chala, and that is children helping each other learn and achieve. We have here 3 of our board members, and they do so many things, so they represent other entities as well. But our organization, we teach our youth first, and these are our forgotten youth that are level 12 probation and foster care youth. The ones that you typically don't see on television, but that many people will say, not in my backyard. But we say yes, in our backyards, in our community, and we're here today because we want them to help change the world as well and be part of this wonderful organization and mission.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sylvia Becker-Hill. I'm here on behalf of the UN Association Chapter San Diego, and I studied gender studies back in the 80s in Germany, and my master thesis was about matriarchal cultures and the whole change to the patriarchy. And from that studies, that research on, I know the patriarchy is man-made, so we can change it. It's not given by God or anyone. And I'm so excited because right now the patriarchy is crumbling everywhere on the whole planet. And we are not only witnessing, we are the leaders shaping the next phase of human evolution. And I know that all trends show it will be true partnership between men and women. And that's why I'm here, and I believe you too. Thank you.
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Aruni Ganimathar. I am the founder for the Sri Lankan Youth Organization. You talk about gender discrimination. In my culture, we were taught to get married and have kids. When I came to USA, I felt like I was 10 years old. I felt like there's more to a woman than just being married and having kids. I created Sri Lankan Youth Organization in 2005 to build leadership and to help educate Sri Lankan kids in Sri Lanka. So with that, I built a chapter in USA, UK, and Canada. And today, and 7 chapters in United States. And all of the presidents are in those chapters are girls. And I'm so proud to see these girls stood up because I stood up. In our cultures, in South Asia, most of them, women are not considered as capable of doing things. Today, I have an 11-year-old daughter who look up to me, and I'm proud to say that I was able to do it because of organizations such as you guys gave me the guts. So thank you.
Barry Simon, thank you very much. Tad Daly is my name. I am an old friend of this character, Barry Simon. Peace marches 20 or 30 years ago, as I recall. I have just moved about a week and a half ago from Washington, D.C., back here home for me to Los Angeles. I am the chief policy wonk for an organization called Citizens for Global Solutions. We used to be called the World Federalist Association. We have long considered ourselves a sister organization of the UNA. The UNA is about strengthening and supporting today's United Nations, and we are about envisioning tomorrow's United Nations. And I want to tell you very specifically, we and a lot of other civil society groups, and UNA is sort of involved in this, have a UN 2020 initiative. It is the 75th anniversary year of the United Nations, and there's a number of UN innovations that we're pushing, and the one that I am most juiced about is creating a UN Parliamentary Assembly. A number of national governments think this is really achievable in the year 2020, so that it won't just be national governments with a voice at the UN, it'll be Karen Bass and Kamala Harris and parliamentarians from all over the world will be able to have a formal voice at the United Nations. Check out UN2020.org, check out globalsolutions.org, and Barry Simon, my brother, I'm happy to be back home with you.
Hello, my name is Susan Angus. I'm Executive Director of Commission on Voluntary Service and Action, and I am new to LA, and I've been introduced to the Pasadena UNA, and we just moved here from New York City, so that's why I'm new. We are an NGO. We have consultative staff at the UN. We represent grassroots organizations across the country that rely on volunteers and promote full-time volunteer opportunities with community groups that deal with farm worker rights, the environment, healthcare, legal justice, all the things that are basic needs of people that are not being dealt with otherwise. We began in 2015 a community education campaign about the SDGs to bring it to the low-income communities, to the grassroots organizations, because to this day when we call people up and say, I would like to talk to you about the 2030 SDGs, they still have not heard about it because it's not in our media. So we're bringing it to the grassroots so that people are empowered to keep government accountable to these goals. And I'm glad to be here and looking forward to working with you.
Susan, just stand over again, Susan, for a second. You're the first person who, in the audience that's mentioned the SDGs, so as a result, you get your official SDG pin. Okay? All right, great, great. I'll just hand you the mic over here.
Thank you. Hi, my name's Carl Schusterman. I'm an old friend of Jenny Hatfield's when, back in the 70s when she worked in the office of Congressman Bielenson. I was an attorney for the Immigration Service, and it's a long story, but I was sort of deep throat then, and we bonded at that time. Now these days are very challenging. We have an 8-person immigration firm in downtown LA. Angeline Chen, one of our attorneys, is head of lawyer moms who go down to Tijuana on the weekends and try to reunite these split families, mothers split from their children. I have a case right now that I'm deeply involved with up in San Francisco, a woman from India who, if she married somebody, you know, in India, if you marry somebody in another caste or another religion, a lot of times, I mean, this is totally horrible, and they call it an honor killing, but the parents will have the brothers go kill their sister, and they're proud of it. So she married somebody from another religion. She has a hearing coming up in San Francisco that I'm going to in a few weeks, and I'm becoming as educated as possible on honor killings. If any of you are experts, we are looking for an expert witness now. Thank you.
Okay, just time for just a couple more quickies. Janet?
Hi, I'm Janet Elliott. I am the president of the International Visitors Council of Los Angeles. And one of our board members, I think, who did a little shout with us, Yael Swerdlow, our board member, is here. We are an organization that brings influencers from around the world here through a program called the International Visitor Leadership Program. So we're all about people-to-people discussions. And we are doing an event, if I can give a tiny little plug, a quick one, on September 27th. In the end of 2017, according to the United Nations, there were 68.5 million refugees in the world. And a good portion of those were women and children. And so we're going to do an event on September 27th at the Watts Labor Community Action Committee Center. And it's going to be all about refugees, migration, and we want to give the facts, let everybody know what's the truth about refugees, where they're coming from, why they're coming here, and it'll be a day-long event. We have information, and so check it out.
Thank you very much. All right.
Thank you. I am so honored to be here, and I want to congratulate everybody who is here, and I want to tell you why. Because September 21st is World Peace Day. And if we aren't working for world peace, who is? And I want us to continue to do that with the SDGs. And I represent the E-Rotary Club also, which is a table full of my supporters, our supporters for our Emmanuel ETA. One film at a time, changing the way we feel about women. Thank you.
Okay, really short.
Hi, how are you guys? My name is Jean-Pierre Perret, and I'm here to speak for the children and adults on the spectrum. I run a nonprofit in Malibu, and I work with children with autism across the board, so I do surf therapy with them. We're doing an event next month with Senator Henry Stern. It's our second annual. We have a close relationship with the communities all around. Also in Mexico, we created a big program down there that's currently running. So I'm very proud to say if you guys have children or no children that are on the spectrum or adults, love to work with them.
We will have a little bit of time later in the program for some specific announcements as well. But right now we have to wrap up with the last couple of people. Sylvia?
Barry mentioned a little quote from Ban Ki-moon that said, "Women hold up half the sky." Half the Sky is the title of a book written by Nicholas Kristof. And I'm looking at this room full of volunteers, and if you haven't read that book, you should, because not only does he talk about women as victims throughout the world, including these United States, but he also tells you how you can counter this. And one of his chief solutions is education for girls. So all of you can find a little place in your organizations to focus on education for girls and read Half the Sky.
And Sylvia is an incredible woman. She's actually responsible for breaking the glass ceiling of Rotary International, because if it wasn't for Sylvia, until Sylvia came along, they did not allow women. Sylvia broke that ceiling. Congratulations. Okay, who from AAUW? Okay.
I would have Kim say this, but I'm representing the state of California. I'm the state co-president. We have over 30 people here today to support Kim, our CEO. Our organization has been around since 1881, and I have to read this because we just changed our mission a little bit. To advance gender equity for women and girls through research, education, and advocacy. And you'll be reading about our research, and Kim will be telling you a lot more about the work that we do. But Jeannie Hatfield is also a member of our organization, so you're all welcome to join us.
Excellent. Okay, excuse me. There will be a little bit more time for some other audience participation later, but for right now, excuse me. For right now, I'd like to bring up, well, first of all, thank you all, because all your organizations are amazing. The work you're doing, sometimes it might feel like a piece of sand on the beach, but it makes a difference. So don't stop. With that said, I'd like to bring up Isabel Tredell to make a little advocacy commercial here for a moment, and then we'll carry on from there. Isabel? You might want to get your cell phones out for this one, please.
Thanks, Barry. Welcome, everyone. My name is Isabel Tridel, and I am the chair of Young Professionals in Southern California. And I'm here to talk about advocacy with Lauren Schaffer, who is the president of the Claremont chapter. So advocacy, something really important about advocacy, it comes from Latin. It's a Latin root that means advocare, which means to call for. We can actually move forward. Perfect. By definition, advocacy involves speaking on behalf of a person or yourself in order to ensure that the rights and needs are recognized. So when we're talking about advocacy, we want to seek three main points, and is that people have their voices heard on issues that are important to them. That's the first one. The second one is to defend and safeguard their rights. And the third one is to have their views and wishes genuinely considered when the decisions are being made about their lives. Next slide.
All right, so here we have some resources that we have gathered for you here. They're all on the, oh, sorry, I am sorry. So we have all of these resources here for you. We will be sharing the website URL that you can go to find these. These are great resources for if you're going to a meeting, if you're going to prepare a report. There's a lot of facts, a lot of data, a lot of exciting materials there. So we can make sure all of these are shared with you. Next slide. And so how can we advocate right here, right now, in this room? Because I know we are full of a room of excited, advocating, wonderful groups here. So what can we do right now? We can all get our phones out, for one. So everybody get your phones or your laptops out. There is Wi-Fi. I think the Wi-Fi name is TCE Guest, and there's no password if anybody needs Wi-Fi. And so here's some steps that we can use to do a quick little advocative, you know what I'm saying. And so first go to unausa.org/advocacy. So go to unausa.org/advocacy. On the advocacy page, there will be a list of links on the right-hand side, and you should select either one of these, either reject the president's proposed UN budget cuts or support bold U.S. leadership on climate action. So you'll click either of these links, and then again on the right-hand side of the next page, there will be a link that says click here to send a letter to your elected leaders. And once you click that button, there will be a list of prompts for you to add your information, and then you can send the message. And so in addition to these instructions we have right here, we also have a bookmark for you today that has these instructions on the back so that you can share these with your friends and family. And as time goes on, you can revisit the website and go through the steps again. So we have some helpers to pass them out, and they will also answer any questions that you may have about following these steps and going through the website.
So then just one last comment, and this is really important and critical. First, thank you, because if you're here, it's because you care about it. So I want to thank everyone who is here attending this event. It means a lot. And when the whole world is silent, even one voice becomes powerful. Malala. So we're going to pass this information. So then if you didn't have the chance to do it now, you can do it at home. Here are the steps.
Okay, Isabel and her assistant, thank you very much. And if you were able to get a picture of the page that had the instructions on the website and all that, maybe did you put that, or it's on the bookmarks. Okay, great. So take the bookmarks home. If you were not able to do your advocacy moment right now, please take a moment when you get home later today or first thing in the morning and send an advocacy message. Once you sign on and follow those instructions, it's very, very simple, okay? So again, I'm very, very thrilled to have Natalie Africa with us today. I mentioned most of the introduction to her in my earlier comments. It's a great privilege that we are part of the UN Foundation. The UN Foundation acquired, or we merged from the UN Association as a separate standalone organization since the inception of the UN when Eleanor Roosevelt created the chapters. And since then, we're always our own separate organization. We became part of the UN Foundation about 5 or so years ago. Under the umbrella of the UN Foundation, we're honored to be partnered with the Better World Campaign, the Nothing But Nets program that provides malaria preventing bed nets, a program called Girl Up that collects adolescent girls here with adolescent girls in other countries, in developing countries and refugee camps, and a program called Shot at Life, Nothing But Nets, as I mentioned, et cetera. So we're really honored to be part of the UN Foundation, and a real bonus of that is getting some really top-notch, highly educated, highly qualified professionals that have been in and around the world and various UN organizations for their life, and that we are able to get them out here to be our keynote speakers and come to our events from time to time. So I'm very thrilled personally, and I'm very thrilled for all of you that today we get to hear from Natalie Africa. So with no further ado, please welcome Natalie Africa.
Thank you, Barry. That was a fantastically warm introduction, so I appreciate it. And thank you for getting me out here, because I hadn't been to the West Coast in over 20 years. Yes, yes, it's true. And my sister used to live here, and the last time I came was when she was a student here. So an added bonus of being here with you wonderful people and being in your beautiful city is that I also got to see a childhood friend, Danielle de Bruyn, who is now the South African General Consul here in LA, and I haven't seen her in over 10 years, and I had no idea she even lived in LA. And when she walked in a few minutes ago, I was like, what are you doing here? And she's like, what are you doing here? So, so we'll catch up a bit later. But I'm going to have my water. I just want to warn you because I'm just recovering from a cold. We've been talking about gender equity. One of the things many of us as women know is that when it comes to office buildings, they're not made for women. The AC, the air conditioning. So my office is like a refrigerator in New York, and I've been sick for 3 weeks. And I went to my doctor on Friday, and I said, I'm going to be traveling to LA. I can't be sick. I can't be coughing while I'm speaking. So he gave me something, but hopefully I'll be okay. But I just wanted to warn in case I have a coughing fit, I'll try not to. So my remarks today are probably going to be a bit different from normal UN speak. So I'm just warning you because I felt it was important to get a bit more hard-hitting and personal on the issue of equality. So, you know, it's going to be a bit different. But the first thing I just want to ask, I heard a lot about who you are. Some of you were speaking earlier, and you're all very motivated and passionate around equality and so on. So I want to ask, how many of you in the room, if we look at the theme of the conference today, how many believe that now is the time for equality? Okay. So Danielle saying yesterday, exactly. So my feeling is that if we had sat in this room in 2008, the year Obama took office, every hand would have been up. If we'd been together as progressive, enlightened people during the 60s civil rights movement, every hand would have been up. During the suffragettes movement, after the abolition of slavery, most people who believed in equality said the time is now. And yet, despite progress that has been made through blood and sweat, yes, slavery was mostly abolished, women attained the right to vote, legal segregation was largely overcome, so progress was made. But we're still far from what we feel is true equality. So why, if so many people believe in it, and we've been fighting for it and dying for it, how come we are still not there? You know, Barry mentioned some statistics earlier when he was speaking, but it's true, women still earn on average 80%, if they're lucky, of what men earn. Less, if say you're a black woman in the US, it's maybe 60%. 1 in 3 black men in the US are in the prison system, 1 in 3, okay? If you are LGBTQ, male or female, anywhere around the world, you're at a disproportionately high risk of homicide as well as suicide. You know, so what are we missing if we all say we believe in equality now, yesterday, but we still are not treating people with equality? Why? So, being South African, I have to mention that on July 18th this year, we observed what would have been the 100th birthday of Nelson Mandela, or Madiba, as we call him in South Africa. And many of you know that Madiba literally dedicated his life, physically, mentally, emotionally, to the goal of equality in South Africa. I'm very lucky because I did have the opportunity to interact with Madiba a number of times, see how he interacted even in very difficult situations. And you come out of that changed. I mean, it's a transformative experience to be around someone like that. But one of my favorite quotes by him is this. He said, "No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin, or his background, or his religion. People must learn to hate. And if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. For love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite." Such a beautiful, yeah. One of the things that always inspired me about Madiba is how all those years when he was in prison, and he was in prison, as you know, locked up by the apartheid government, which was largely represented by the Afrikaans community in South Africa, he learned to speak and read Afrikaans fluently. He read about their history. He read the literature of Afrikaners, who were the oppressors in South Africa. And he did this, he said, so that he could better understand their thinking, their passions and fears, all the better to communicate and negotiate with them. So he tried to go inside their minds and feel who these people were. Most people couldn't understand how or why he could have done this, including many of us, I admit. Because how often do we take the time to inconvenience ourselves to better understand those who we don't like, who we resent, or who we feel are not our equal? We don't. We put a wedge. We try and shut them off from us. So we don't really try and fill that gap between them and ourselves. Instead, we try and widen the gap. I recently read something about a book by a writer called Robin DiAngelo. Some of you may have heard about it. Her book's called White Racism, Why It's So Hard for White People to Talk About Racism. In her book, DiAngelo talks about how we tend to think that racism is about individual acts of intentional meanness, which are conscious and planned. This tends to exempt most people from being racist since they deny consciously doing anything racist. As a white woman, she admits herself that she has a racist worldview from having grown up in a racist culture. The first thing you must do, she points out, is to break the apathy of not taking initiative and then move on to making an impact. She also talks about how there's a continuum of racism that spans a spectrum of behavior. So you may say, I'm not racist, so-and-so is, but like it or not, you're still somewhere on the continuum by virtue of growing up in a racist culture. And this could apply to all of us, whether we're white or black, because if we grow up in a culture that's stratified in some way, where be it by race, by gender, by class, we become that. So this isn't something most of us want to admit, but it's important if we really want to make change, to acknowledge it. Another thing, how many of you have seen the new Spike Lee film called Black Klansman? Yeah, a number of you have. And you may all have differing opinions. His films are always a bit controversial. But what impacted me most about seeing the film was how, for a large part of the film, the KKK is portrayed as kind of comical, easily taken in, ineffective, even if potentially dangerous, but they're kind of seen as these ignoramuses who can't get things right. But then at the end of the film, we see how the narrative transitions, and it demonstrates how that racist KKK ideology has effectively been mainstreamed into US politics today, culminating in the current administration and the very visible renewal of the extreme right. So how did this happen? If these were like ineffective, almost comical, fringe ignoramuses, how did this happen? And what the film is trying to say, and what I believe this book by DiAngelo is saying, is it happened because ordinary people who said they weren't racist were still tolerant of racism, benefited from it, failed to take it seriously, and thus enabled its ideology to win back the White House. And again, I think this is true not only in regard to racism, but all forms of equality. Most organizations say they treat women as equal, or are trying to. But we know that when it's actually time to offer a woman a position over a man, then they're quick to find 10 reasons why women can't fill that job, okay? And if she does manage to get it, we know women are over-scrutinized compared to men, and ultimately, for the large part, considered to be failures. People find terrible ways to bring them down and say why they're not working out, which is why only 4.8% of Fortune 500 CEOs are women. This is also why globally, if we go to the other extreme, we can look at CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. But if we look at the other side of the development spectrum, 830 women die every day while giving birth around the world, despite the repeated commitment of all countries, including through the Sustainable Development Goals, to ensuring reductions in maternal mortality. As someone I know, Naveen Rao, who used to head Merck for Mothers, used to say, women will stop dying when giving birth, when society regards them as deserving to live, to have safe, protected births. It's not like we don't know how to ensure safe maternal births. Most countries do. But it's, do we care enough? Do we really see women as equal and deserving? So we claim equality every day, but every day we qualify it. We put caveats on it. We flirt with inequality, discrimination, and judgment. I'm the mother of an 18-year-old. So what I'm going to say next is quite personal because I'm reminded of it every day. We consider our children to be equal until they voice an opinion or want to take an action we don't agree with. Then, who's equal? No, not them. We're the boss, right? We're quick to judge, we're quick to penalize, we're quick to sentence and find something to criminalize them for. So what we're actually doing is saying something and often not doing it. And my daughter has challenged me on this. And finally, I think I'm beginning to get it. But what we actually do is we pass down our patterns of oppression that we don't even realize are that towards them. In the name of this is our culture, this is acceptable behavior. I heard someone just now speaking about, the whole perception of women are meant to be married at this age and so on. So we say this is our culture, this is acceptable behavior, or these are our family reputations or whatever, and all kinds of other excuses, because we always have many when it's time to not really commit to equality. And we'll come up with them if they don't exist, so that we can perpetuate inequality. So we fail to take responsibility. And instead, we make achieving equality someone else's problem. And it's got to be something that we deal with through legislation or policy or a quota. And we often don't question our own behavior. So as I see it, what many people want is to call for equality for themselves, but not necessarily for others. Goal 10 of the SDGs is all about reducing inequality within and amongst countries. And if you look at the SDGs, and we have them on our tables, you could say that all the SDGs are interconnected to help meet this goal. But ultimately, and this is why I say I don't want to speak too much UN speak, the SDGs are not just about cold targets and metrics, but about love for people and planet. And I really love that song that was sung earlier, because that's what it's really saying. At the end of the day, we don't achieve equality through numbers, through policies, but through loving and through really, really caring. So I want to give an example where I had to catch myself just about a week ago. I live in Harlem, in New York. And those of you who know Harlem know that there are all kinds of human misery in Harlem. There is a lot of poverty. It's a very cruel place for a lot of people. And I was coming out of the subway the other day. I was coming back home from work. So, you're preoccupied. I want to get home. I need to do this. And as I was about to cross the road, there was a man sitting in a wheelchair, and I walked past him, and he said, "Ma'am, can you give me some cash for some food?" And I just said, "Sorry, I don't have cash." And I crossed the road, and it was true, I didn't have cash because I hardly carry cash like most people. And then as I walked across the road, I thought, he actually said he wanted food. So I turned back, and I went to him, and I said, "What's your name?" And he said, "James." And then I took a moment to look at him. He had no legs. He had one eye that was gone. So he doesn't even have the means to get cash or food for himself. And there I was walking away from him because I'm preoccupied with my own stuff. So I said, "What can I get you to eat?" And he told me, and I went next door and I got him something to eat. And I told him my name, and I thought, next time I walk past him, I will see how else I can help him. But most often, this is what we do. We walk away from people's needs, right? We don't seek ways every minute of every day to fill the gap between us and them with equality, because we're actually so numb to it. Like, I live in Harlem. If you live in a poor country, it's the same. You end up being numbed by people's misery, and you take it for granted. And that's where we continue then to perpetuate this inequality. But the good thing is, so I don't want to leave you on a bad note, it's never too late to act, right, in the name of equality. Because every moment, just like that moment I just spoke about for me, brings an opportunity for us to bridge that gap, to go towards that person, to try and understand what they really are about, just like Madiba did with trying to understand the Afrikaner mind. So a few suggestions. I don't know if some of you have heard of the Harvard Unconscious Bias Test. If you can Google it, just Google Harvard Unconscious Bias. It gives you all these tests to test your biases. And I've done it, my husband has done it, and we're shocked. And you'll be shocked and you'll be surprised at yourself for not knowing you have these biases. But do it, and then laugh at yourself and say, "Wow, okay, well now I know I can change." Actively support, like you are by being here, the UN-USA Association. It's a great platform for advocacy. It's all about change, okay? It's a fantastic global, local movement for advocacy and activism. And those of you, the 50% who aren't members of UN USA, join, because then you will constantly be reinforced in that desire to change. And I know you are all here because you have that desire. And I didn't give this speech today because I'm saying you're not, because you are here, otherwise you wouldn't. It's because we all have to catch ourselves and all say, what else can we do, okay? And then we're going to have an interaction just now with the 3 honorees who are with us tonight. And I know that every one of them are guided by passion and love for change, and that's what that drives their work on gender equality, female leadership, equality, and humanity. So let's listen to them and be inspired, because I think all of them are going to show us a lot of exciting tools that they have around this movement for change and equality. And finally, I'm going to come back to the words of Madiba, where he says we can be taught to love rather than to hate. So I do believe that this journey starts by teaching ourselves first. So let's do it.
Natalie, that's amazing comments. I'm reminded of when I first visited the Museum of Tolerance in Los Angeles, and there was a area that had 2 doors, and one said prejudiced, and one said not prejudiced. And to go into that area, you had to go through one of those doors. And most people, as I was watching, would try to go through the not prejudiced door. You couldn't. And we all have prejudice, as you mentioned. And you know, I know that I was raised in a family with a mom, a dad, and 3 brothers. So how I related to women was very much affected by that, and not having any sisters. And so for me, it's been a lifelong learning. I know I've made my errors, and I probably still will make some, because it's like you said, it's kind of almost in the genes. And how do you get through that and become a better person? And it's just an ongoing commitment to being a better person. There is no end. And so on behalf of the UNA Southern California Division, I want to present you with this certificate of appreciation for being with us today. So thank you, Natalie. Okay, so now I'd like to present the first of our 3 Global Citizen Award recipients. And along with each Global Citizen Award recipient, we'll be coming up with a person to be making some comments and a person to be presenting the award. So first, I would like to invite Judith Harris, Ellen Snortland, and Global Citizen Award recipient Pauline Field to the stage. I'll just be right here for a second, and I'll be done. Judith, by the way, is past president of the UNA Southern California Division. She's also past president, as is Ellen, of the Pasadena chapter. And Ellen is a past Global Citizen Award recipient. Judith is also on the national board for the United Nations Association. And so exemplary people, and they will be further introducing Pauline.
Pauline Field was born in London, England, and she founded here 50/50 Leadership, a nonprofit promoting women's equal leadership after leading the establishment of the Glendale Commission on the Status of Women. When developing the proposal for the commission, she realized how few women are in top leadership positions in all walks of life. And as we are half the population, decided to work for women being half the leaders. She published her book, Feisty and Fearless, Nice Girls can, capitalized, be leaders and has appeared on a number of radio and television shows. Pauline is the president of the Women's City Club of Pasadena, and she has received many awards, too many to mention here. I had an alternate speech which lists them all, but a lot of them are in the program. So please be sure to look in the program book to see more. But I can't not say that Pauline created and was the COO of Fieldworks Incorporated, a global management consulting agency which grew so fast that Inc. magazine invited her to be part of the fastest growing 500 companies at that time. And this was a while ago, so that was really an achievement. And she also has recently been national chair for Kaiser Permanente's Women's Empowerment Program. I've seen the results of her work over the 15 years that I've known her, first at a UNA Pasadena chapter event where she spoke about women's leadership. Soon after, Pauline became a board member and during her tenure created a UNA advocacy presentation which was taken to many organizations in support of the United Nations Association. She facilitated a UNA board retreat for the chapter and later 50-50 leadership and the Pasadena UNA successfully collaborated on the Women of the World event for 7 years. The first year, 50 attended. By the 7th year, attendance was over 300. And Pauline drew a large group when she presented at a Pasadena chapter coffee talk on International Women's Day. Pauline, through 50-50 Leadership, created Leadership Circle, a training program for women. I was honored to attend the women's presentations on the outcomes at the completion of their program. They were each prepared to go out and be a leader. Currently, through 50-50 Leadership, she is heading a financial literacy program for young women who grew up in foster care. Pauline has worked continuously and selflessly to empower women of all ages while simultaneously including men. She is an inspiration and role model in her dedication and respect for 50-50 leadership. Congratulations, Pauline.
Hello. I just disappeared there for a second to get your award. I am so honored to present you with the Global Citizen Award, which I'm informally dubbing the Badass Award. And I would like to bring badass into polite society. And as a revolt to the so non-memorable acronyms of the United Nations system, which is like, really, the elimination of all the forms of discrimination against women? And nobody can remember any of them. They can remember badass, though, which is bothered, agitated, determined to undermine asinine policies. So, Pauline, here is your Badass Award.
Thank you, Judith and Ellen. I'm happy to be a badass. And first of all, I want to just add to something that was said, that Half the Sky was written by 2 people. Cheryl Wu Dunn and Nicholas Kristof. And unfortunately, often it's just Nicholas that gets the credit, but she wrote it too. So thank you, for the introduction, Judith, and thank you to the UNA Southern California for this honor, and to Ginny and her team for putting this on. I know what it takes to put on an event like this. And of course to Barry, who's been, it's his brainchild and his vision for 11 years. And thank you all for being here. And I want to thank also all the volunteers over the past 15 years that have worked with me in all the endeavors at 50/50 Leadership. I'm always wanting to be present to why I do what I do. Why do I put in such long hours that my husband Barry has to joke about needing an appointment to see me? To help me with that, for the past 15 years, I've scoured over 150 news sources to publish the Equality Standard each month, providing news of, about, and for women locally and around the world, and it keeps me informed of just how women are doing and how men are supporting us or not. Our vision at 50/50 Leadership is that all leaders in the world, at all levels, from family to corporate to academia, the arts, industry, government, are women. I know we've got a long way to go. There are, however, women everywhere whose potential for leadership is never realized. We've just launched a program that addresses a segment of these women, those who grew up in foster care. Let me tell you a few things about what growing up in foster care means. It means that unless you are one of the lucky 15%, you will be abused. This might be sexual abuse, emotional, or physical abuse. It might mean you are neglected. It means you will not get love from the surrogate parents and that you will not be taught basic independent living skills. It also means that whether or not you have foster parents who are kind to you, you will be pulled from there at least every 2 years, because after all, the whole premise of fostering is that it's temporary. The thinking is that maybe one of your real parents will give up their addiction to drugs, get a job, settle down, and be ready to take you back. Or they'll receive enough therapy that they suddenly become a model citizen and want to have their child or children back so they can raise them. The sad truth is that most children who are placed in foster care will stay there until they emancipate out at 18 or 21. They will have been moved an average of 7 times. That means 7 new homes, 7 new schools, 7 new communities, 7 new sets of friends. And no one person guiding them through it all, loving them through it all. No wonder then that when the door closes on them at age 18, when they no longer receive a stipend to live on, they have no one checking in on them, that within 6 months, over half of them are homeless. A majority of them will have a child before they're 19. Now they have 2 mouths to feed, and there's a very real chance that the cycle of which they are a victim will begin again. Given that 70% of the prison population grew up in foster care, you know that a large percentage of these women will get a roof over their head and food in their stomach by being incarcerated. Leaders? What chance do they have to become leaders? Yet despite this appalling story, many of them realize that having lived through such adversity, they now have strengths that will serve them, and they start to turn their lives around. Have you heard Tiffany Haddish? She's the comedian who has recently become quite a star, and she speaks openly about her time in foster care. Singer Cher, Simone Biles, the world-class athlete, Dr. Ruth Weistheimer, the popular sex therapist. These are but a few more examples of women who grew up in foster care. So there is hope. 50/50 leadership is there for these women to teach them financial literacy, how to earn, save, and spend wisely so they can build a financial foundation under them. We give them the information and skills to build their financial lives, and we offer them mentors who stay with them for a year, offering caring and helping them to solve their problems around money as they come up. We'll also be starting a peer support group for these young women. The demand for this is already proving very great. These women are thirsty for empowerment, ready to be leaders in their own lives and in the community. If you know anyone looking to pay it forward, we need many more mentors as well as sponsors so we can reach more of these young women and expand quickly to meet this demand. Every woman we reach is unlocking that woman's potential as a leader and to know they are equal to each of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Pauline. The next people to come up will be Barbara Goen-Mueller, Mark Fowler, and Global Citizen Award recipient, Emmanuel Etier. As they're coming up, just mention that Barbara is the president of the UN Association in Santa Barbara and a global leader in many other aspects as well. And while they're coming up, let me just take a moment and acknowledge all the chapter presidents, all the chapter leaders that are here. If you are a leader of one of the chapters, you could just raise your hand or stand up. Ike Kamasani, Barbara Mueller, we have from Pasadena, Daria, and raise your hand and shout out your name. What? Oh, Alina from San Diego, Lena O'Toole, Daria Makuch, Barbara Mueller, Ike Kamasani, David Tuckman in the back. If I've skipped anybody, I apologize, but all the, John Bainan, and we have, I mentioned Ike Kamasani, all those that are, pardon? Oh, Joy Adams from Orange County, of course. So anyway, for the chapter leaders that are here, thank you for your support and for doing a great job with your chapters. No further ado, Barbara Mueller, Mark Fowler, and Emmanuel Etier.
What an honor to be here to represent FEM, Women Healing the World. When you think about it, Emmanuel Etier said to me one day, I'm going to help women have their position that is going to be so significant that nobody will remember that a man created this film. Imagine the humility of a man who could say that. He interviewed 555 women. 50 made it to the final cut. Then he came to me and he said, would you like to do the world premiere of FEM, Women Healing the World? And what do you think I said? Of course, of course. We rented the Marjorie Luke Theater. 500 women showed up. Talk about being president for 1 week and having 500 people show up to our UNA event. If you want to have a crowd, invite Emmanuel to share his film with you. We thought that we were doing great. And then he creates another film, The Invocation. Then he creates another film, Cure. Why? He's changing the way we see peace on planet Earth, one film at a time. What did he start with? Us. Be glad you're a woman. And men, be glad you support us. And men, we love you. We're not saying you're not important. I wouldn't be here without my dad. I always told my mom that. She was a feminist from the beginning. My grandfather immigrated from Hungary because he said, no more war. And when I was 3, what did he tell me? I was going to be a peacemaker. I said, Grandpa, I'm only 3. He said, but you're going to be a peacemaker. And so I married Robert Mueller to continue that. And in comes Emmanuel again. Every time I turn around, because we live in the same town, we get the opportunity to enhance women and film. Sharon Stone is his co-producer. I could tell you more about Emmanuel, but he has a little film which will make you be glad he got this award. So I am so honored to say thank you, Emmanuel. I am so honored to have my co-author of Revolutionary Conversations look on the last page of your program, and you'll see about that. And then I want to put another plug in. Read your program. Every one of us who put an ad in here, we worked hard to communicate. I got the color ad on the back of the cover. It says, join us for our World Peace program that's coming up on World Peace Day. And who are we honoring? Deepa Willingham. Why? When she was 60 years old, started the PACE school in India. Why? Because girls had no chance to be unsold. Once you're sold for grocery money, you think about that. So that's why we're honoring her on the 21st, and I hope you come to Santa Barbara to Emmanuel's film today and to Mark Fowler. I want to thank you both for supporting the women in your life.
A lot of people, when they watch my movie, always tell me, oh, it was great, Emmanuel, so what can I do? And I'm like, you have to get involved.
There's a revolution of spiritual seekers and warriors are coming out.
Look at all of these people marching for peace together at the exact same time. Humanity. It's remarkable. It's magic.
The journey into self-realization and discovery begins with the desire for connection.
If you look at all the people in history, from Jesus Christ, or Buddha, or Muhammad, or JFK, or Martin Luther King, or Obama, it's all simple people that we are, who suddenly said, enough, I'm going to get involved. Run for office.
Women are becoming the primal power person.
La próxima revolución probablemente venga de las mujeres, de la pasión por vivir.
Any woman who knows how to run a household knows how to run a world. Men cannot do the patriarchy, but women and men together could.
When we wake up together, then, and then probably more 30 years and 10 years, then indeed there will be peace. And then we can transform what we've been living in, which is fear and chaos.
They have within them these ancient sacred traditions that honor the earth that we live on.
These are the people who can teach us how to get in touch with Mother Earth.
Message from this culture is without Pachamama there is no life.
Connecting to the shamanic path is a very integrative aspect. It's very easy to connect to it. It's so intuitive. It's who we really are. It's our source.
Just don't wait to be saved. Do the saving yourself. We are all supermen and superwomen. We all have incredible capacities of healing and helping each other, and we all have great ideas.
Imagine 7 billion unique beings who get that their unique way of interacting with the world, perceiving the world, communicating with the world is viable, is valuable, makes a difference, is significant for each of us, and to help each of us through each of our unique perspectives to appreciate and get the magic of it all, what we're really capable of.
Come home to who you really are. Experience the love that is your own essence.
Feel the goodwill, feel the oneness. Refusing to be taken for granted and say, no, you can be an agent of change yourself. You can change the world, it's possible. But it starts with waking up and doing the work.
There's food enough for every human being on this planet. There's water enough for every human being on this planet. We do not have scarcity. We have selfishness.
You need to come back to economy as the art of living, of taking care of the earth, not taking from the earth.
Where's the revolution?
On planet Earth, there are only 7 billion genuses. There is not one single Indian. There is not one single slave. We are all free spirit. We are all free human beings. Everybody can make a change. You know, it's so simple to make a change. Every single day when you cross paths with somebody, look at them with love in your eyes. And that's how you change the world, is really by sending that message of love constantly.
I've I've known you for a bit. That little movie there put it all together. I want to know, when are you running for politics? We need somebody like you. We talked about. We were walking up, and I said, "Can I call you a badass?" He said, "No, a big badass." And I said, "Well, I'm thinking here, and I'm thinking he's not a badass. He's a real mensch. This is somebody who really reaches out to all of us, and I really enjoy knowing you and working with you, and appreciate everything you do. God bless you."
I know a little bit about the life. My best and worst enemy. Yeah, I always do that. Selfie of the group. Sorry. What's the point of the filmmaker? Come on, please. All right, so now you're going to hear my broken English with a horrible French accent. It works usually with ladies, they are charmed. Men usually just start laughing. I've got one page of people to thank. I always start thanking people this way. Don't forget anybody, because you know, in speeches, people always say, "Oh, and I hope I didn't forget anybody." Well, I start with this before I run out of time. So thank you, the UNA of UC, for having me here. It's a huge honor. I've been a UNA member for now 4 or 5 years, thanks to Barbara Gogan-Muller, who is the first person I have to thank because she nominated me. See, a woman nominating a man, that's, you know, right there humbling, you know. And actually, as a man, I owe everything to women because, hey, you gave me birth. That's because I'm here. That's because of you. Thank you, obviously, the leaders of this chapter of the UNA, Ginny Hartfield and Barry Simon. I'm not sure where you are. Thank you so much. All my brothers and sisters of the Rotary Club. Damn, 2 years as your president? Are you crazy? It's like after 1 year, it's like, can you stay 1 more year? I'm like, okay, fine. I mean, thank you also to my financial angels, because, you know, we never thanked enough our sponsors. So even though none of them are here, maybe they're watching on the net. So I have to be very thankful for them. And mainly Barbara Lazaroff, Peter Klaus, Jennifer Salchi, Andrea Barron, Annette Muller, Don Zul, and Margie E. Webb. Notice how many women. One guy, the rest women, yeah. Anyway, just saying. Thank you also to my distributors, because as filmmakers, right, that lady knows, it's so damn hard to get distribution. And for the last 2 movies that are released on November 4th for We the People, To Vote and Rock the Vote, and December 5th for The Cure, we have a great distributor named Freestyle releasing. So I really want to thank them, Byron Allen, Chris Carambolus, and Dan Fisher for giving me the love and support. It's so important as a filmmaker. And last but not least, my true and spiritual partner and meaning of my life, my wife, Roxana Bina. She couldn't be here because she's taking care of our 3 boys, young boys, Felix, Max, and Rex. So I'm so thankful to her. And the godmother of my kids, my producing partner of the last year, Miss Sharon Storr. I really adore you all. You're beautiful soul. And you bring tears to my eyes. Okay, let's get together, Emmanuel. You can do that. So the theme, Ginny called me and she said, remember the theme? I'm like, yes, I remember the theme. And I did my research. Our celebration this year with a UNA event and focus is gender equality. As you can see by a quick sample of our work, I've always been committed to this crusade. And it is a crusade because you ladies can only vote since 1920. It's really not normal. But what about the other constitutional rights for women? I live in America for 30 years, so I've been, always comparing my homeland, France, who is a little bit more advanced, but not so much. And actually right now, it's like a big battle. But anyway, let's focus on America because we are all living here. So how can we have gender equality today when from the beginning of the Republic of the United States of America, women were left out of the Constitution? Abigail Adams is quoted as suggesting to her husband, John Adams, remember the ladies, do not put such unlimited power in the hands of the husband. Remember, all men would be tyrants if they could. Oh, wow, what's going on today in the world? We are determined to foment a rebellion and will not hold ourselves bound by any laws in which we have no voice or representation. Well, ladies, it might be time to lead a rebellion again, because today you still don't have equal constitutional rights to women. Even so, in 1923, the Equal Right Amendment was introduced in Congress to give women all the other rights in the Constitution, among other equal rights for property and employment. The ERA was never, ever, ever, ever passed. Is it because we only have 20% of women in Congress? Is it because Trump's cabinet is composed of 19 men and only 5 women? Is it because there is only 1/3 of women at the Supreme Court of Justice? I don't understand. It's insane. I counted. There are basically 163 million women in the USA and 158 million men. What's going on? Clearly, we, the people, we are making the necessary effort for gender equality to be a reality, as you can see with the recipient of Today Global Citizen Award. But we need to make our government accountable. And thank you for our mayor, by the way, and his work. You see, in Los Angeles, it can be done. So we need them to take action. No more dreams for gender equality now. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a call for action. Peace in action. Peace in running for office, whether it's your UNA chapter, your Rotary Club, your church, your state, your school district, or even in 2020, running for president. And I can tell you, I see a lot of good candidates among you. Ladies, all over the world. We are on the internet. Where's the camera? Ladies, wake up. We cannot wait to be safe. We, the people, are the savior of each other. It's time right now, right here, to stand up, unite, and exclaim loud and clear our freedom of speech, our right for equality, peace, and justice for all. In one S, we heal the world. Blessing. Love you.
Congratulations, sir. I'd like to now call up Susan Negretti, Ginny Hatfield, our chair of this beautiful event. We can give Ginny another hand as she comes up. And Kim Churches from the AAUW.
This is a memorable day for AAUW and for our members who are here representing California's 125 branches and over 10,000 members, and to witness the presentation of this prestigious award. The Los Angeles Interbranch Council of AAUW has a long and successful affiliation with the United Nations Association's Southern California Division, and we thank Jenny Hatfield and Barry Simon for their dedication and their leadership. It's a real honor for me to introduce AAUW's CEO, Kimberly Churches. You can read a lot about her in your program, but I'd really like to tell you how I feel about her. She's a woman that I think is the right person to lead this organization deeper into the 21st century with clarity, purpose, and commitment. Kim has used her first 18 months in office to travel around the country, meeting with AAUW leaders and members to share how the grassroots organization from this group, who started in 1881, focuses its efforts to improve the lives of women and girls both in this country and around the globe. She's a working woman, the mother of a young daughter. She's one of us, and she's demonstrated her dedication as a tireless supporter of women and girls throughout her professional and personal life. So as a little surprise, on behalf of Kim's support of an AAUW program that's close to her heart, and today, because she took the time on her birthday to accept this award on our behalf, I'm very pleased to gift her with the announcement that the first Los Angeles chapter of AAUW's Younger Women's Task Force will launch this Friday. And to personally thank Kim for her engagement with this important part of our organization. And also, I know that she mentored the talented young women who are our legacy and will continue our work. Kimberly Churches is a visionary, a strategist, and a dedicated leader, and I'm really honored that she's here today to accept this award on our behalf. Thank you.
I reserve the pleasure of awarding this to Kim myself. I wanted to, as an almost 2-decade member of AAUW, I know how committed our members are who are sitting out there and how much they have done since 1881. We all haven't been around quite that long. We're working on it. But Kim is a breath of fresh air to our organization. I think you're going to see and read a lot more about AAW through Kim's leadership. So I'm delighted to present this to her.
There you go, that good? This way? Got it, Jane? Great, good. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
This also belongs to you.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's okay. Okay. I'll put it right here while we do this. There we go. I got it right here. Okay, great. Wow, thank you so, so much. And what a privilege to be with you all today. One, I'd be completely remiss if I didn't say how humbled and honored I am to sit here with our two other extraordinary honorees. I got goosebumps listening to you both and look forward to continued conversation. So congratulations to you both and thank you for all you're doing. Really, I need to say this is not for me. This is for this organization that I am proud enough to lead. And first and foremost, on behalf of the 170,000 members, supporters, and advocates for AAUW around the country in every congressional district, I'm so proud to accept this 2018 Global Citizen Award for AAUW. Woo! So, now, you know already, because they're a raucous bunch, there's a lot of us in this room. So, and I know they've been sitting for a while. So I'm gonna ask all of our AUW family to please rise, and this award is for you. Congratulations. So as Emmanuel just said to us, and as we also heard from Natalie's terrific remarks earlier, the time is now and the time has always been now. Our mission at AUW closely aligns, as you heard from Jane Niemeyer, the co-president of AUW California. We are here to advance gender equity for all women and girls through research. Yes, we still believe facts matter and analysis still matters. Through education and programs, and through advocacy, which we've also been talking about today. For 137 years, AUW has been a trailblazer, refusing to accept the norms, refusing to accept what is as what can be. And we've been breaking down barriers for women in education, whether that's pre-K through 12th grade, whether that's higher education, VOTEC, apprenticeships and trainings, in the workplace, in our communities, in our societies, at a very grassroots level, to a regional level, state level, nationally and internationally, and back again. And today, we celebrate and reflect on our organization's rich past and terrific amount of impact we've achieved over that time period, but it really is about focus, relevance, and what we're doing today and tomorrow to ensure women and girls can continue to march forward. I, for one, am nobody's caretaker, and none of these incredibly badass women are willing to sit still and stay silent. We are going to continue to march forward. We also remain one of the world's largest sources of funding for women seeking fellowship and graduate work. And in fact, this year we've provided nearly $4 million. $4 million. We're a nonprofit organization that has a $125 million endowment to support women as they try to achieve more, nationally and internationally. That $4 million of funding just this year alone has impacted over 250 outstanding women and nonprofit organizations here in the US and abroad. It's really quite astounding. Last night I was in San Francisco with a group of extraordinary professionals and a few of our fellowship awardees, and hearing what they're doing now in their careers and how they credit that fellowship to allowing them to actually pursue their dreams. It's another goosebump moment for sure. In fact, this year marks our 100th anniversary. Just at the end of 17 marks our 100th anniversary. So AUW women have been committed to helping women around the world for 100 years in establishing international fellowships, first awarded in 1917. Since then, over 3,600 international scholars from 145 nations have received an AUW fellowship. And we fund those projects that also address the needs of women and girls in communities around the world. And really in timely ways, as we're seeing rollbacks in certain areas. We're all anticipating that, and I know we're talking about it around our dinner tables and over coffee with friends, and indeed today over lunch, that we're all concerned about some of those rollbacks. So we ensure that those fellowships and grants are going to make sure we can continue to move forward. Recently, I'd like to also note our archivist and historian at AUW told me a little bit about some of our history with the UN as well, because our global roots run deep. During World War II, AUW assisted European women scholars whose lives were at risk. Our members helped find them academic positions here in the United States and in other countries for students, professors, to protect them as they were fleeing their homes, saving their lives, families, and their economic security. She also told me recently that AUW was talking about creating a world organization before the UN was even formed, issuing a resolution in 1943 that, quote, supported the inclusion of competent women in any post-war policy-making board, staff, or conferences. And that resolution positioned AUW to be included in the discussions following World War II. So this award today is for AUW board member Virginia Gildersleeve, nominated by Eleanor Roosevelt as the sole woman in the U.S. delegation at the San Francisco Conference in '45, which created the UN Charter. It's also for AUW member Esther Brunauer, who helped found UNESCO. It's for Dorothy Kenyon, an AUW board member and judge who helped found the Commission on the Status of Women and who argued for gender-neutral terms like humanity instead of man in the drafting of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. In addition to our AUW history with the founding of UNA USA and the Council of Organizations, AUW has been and is a proud member and co-founder of the Working Group on Girls, and we help to spearhead efforts to bring the concerns of girls to the United Nations. We're committed every day to supporting SDG 5, achieving gender equality and empowering all women and girls. And in June of this year, thanks to input from 6,000 members, stakeholders around this nation and around the globe, sitting down with major foundations, corporations, individuals, elected and appointed officials, we launched a bold and maybe a little audacious new strategic vision for AUW. And it is focused on advancing gender equity through education and training, economic security, and leadership. Now, I'm going to talk for a moment about economic security because it's something following the 2016 election. If real estate is about what 3 words? Location, location, location. That election in many ways was about jobs, 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 and the worry that so many Americans have had of not seeing their children or themselves be able to really pay their bills and move forward. But on education and training, this organization has always been about education. It's foundational to who we are since 1881, right? Of giving women an opportunity to really thrive in our economies and our communities. But why ampersand training? Because as we heard very much from Natalie and all of us know, inequalities in this nation are only growing. That gap is widening. And we are not ensuring that we are creating and training the next workforce in ways to have the new Rosie the Riveter, to ensure that women, regardless of their education, have opportunities for a living wage where they can support their families as we are growing as heads of households in every community across America. This is not about a red state, blue state, or purple state. This isn't about personal politics. It's about ensuring everyone can thrive. But our plan, too, is more than just words on paper, because what are words on paper? They're just aspirations. It's about action, as Emmanuel has said as well. And it's tied to real accountability and metrics, very much like the UN SDGs. So I'm going to give you a little bit on the pay gap. We've all heard about the pay gap, right? And Natalie mentioned it earlier. We know that the pay gap that women face compared to male colleagues, and while we will at AUW and many of you are continuing to work on policies and laws at the local, regional, state, and national level, and I'm proud of some of the great work going on right here in the great state of California, we'll continue to do that. But we launched an initiative this year to train 10 million women how to negotiate on behalf of themselves through salary negotiation programs that work. Now, I will tell you, friends, why this is important. AUW has been doing this for a long time, but we've been training on average 15,000 to 17,000 women. That was in the margins. It's fantastic, and those women were impacted, but we need to and we must do more. This is not about platitudes, it's about action, and so we will train 10 million women by 2022. We'll also be working with employers, not in a way to say that you have problems, but in terms of continuous improvement. How can we help employers in the public sector and private sector to do more and be better? This is all part of a multi-pronged approach at AUW in our economic security work, and just an example of what we're doing in every congressional district around the nation and the globe. But all of us, every one of us in this room, we are all stakeholders in gender equality. Whether you're students, educators, family members, employers, government officials or appointed officials, working in NGOs, public or private sectors, every girl, every woman deserves support, training, legal assistance, environmental and social protections, human and basic civil rights to overcome gender-based discrimination once and for all.
We are honored and thrilled to partner with UNA USA and the UN to continue building effective, inclusive solutions. And as we work together as partners, women and girls everywhere can and will finally reach their full potential across our lands. So now I thank you, and let's honestly just get back to work. Thank you.
Natalie Africa, if you could please rejoin us in the front, please re-welcome Natalie Africa as our panel moderator. We only have about 30 minutes or so for our panel, so I look forward to a very robust conversation.
All right, so
1, 2.
is this on? Yeah.
Does it work? Yep.
So what we're going to do now is get a little conversation going with our three honorees. I would like to make sure that we have a little time for some questions, discussion with the audience as well. So we'll kick off with a couple of questions that I'll pose to them, and then we'll open it up. So any of you who have questions that you'd like to ask of any of them, just get them ready in your mind, and we'll pass the mic around in a little bit. Okay, so Pauline, I'm going to start with a question to you. So we heard about some of the wonderful ways in which 50/50 leadership is filling the gap in terms of women's leadership, about the new initiative you spoke about around women, girls who've grown up in foster care. But we know that that whole territory of women's leadership is still contested terrain. So what kind of difficulties do you face in doing this work, and how do you try and confront those? What help do you need? What are the nitty-gritty day-to-day issues that challenge you?
Well, I think, as has already been mentioned here today, the whole issue of unconscious bias, because sexism and misogyny is woven into the very fabric of our life. And so that is what stops us in so many ways to be able to have more women as leaders. And I still hear from people that, well, we don't have a problem. We've got lots of women as leaders. They don't know, and they feel like, well, why are you still fighting this? Why do you think this is still needed? And so that's one of the biggest barriers. And that also has been said here, that it takes each one of us to be in action. And there is so much that is needed that so often people are saying, well, but I'm working over here or I'm working over there. And we all need to be taking action, whether it's on gender equality, on getting more women in leadership, peace in the world. But, there is so much that is needed and so much for calling our attention. So, those are a couple of the blocks. But, one of the things that I want to point out is that in Liberia, when Ellen Johnson Sirleaf was running for president, the way she got elected was there were nurses and teachers who went around one person at a time and said, this is why we need her. And it's grassroots that gets the job done. And if you ever wonder, or if you talk to anybody that thinks that one person, what can I do? You know, you can think of that. You know, when I started the Women's Commission in Glendale, you know, I didn't know how to do that. I just got up and did it. You know, and you can do anything that you want to do to make a difference.
Thank you, that's great. Speaking about Liberia, one story I also heard was that during the election, because the polling stations would close at a certain time, and if you hadn't got there, you just wouldn't make it. So women with babies were given priority to get to the front. So what women would do is pass the babies around. Yeah, so that's a great example of collective action and women supporting women's action. Thanks, Pauline. So Emmanuel, I'm going to move to you. Your films, as we saw, reach millions of people with a message that emphasizes people, peace, and planet. And we heard about the great success of your film, Femme. And I saw in one interview that you said Femme is an I love you to women. So I'd love to know what you got from making the film, personally, at a personal level, and then what do you hope to have achieved in making the film?
Well, I was a whiny, depressed, almost suicidal little boy. And I think I'm almost a man. That's what it gave me. I mean, it gave me a knowledge I didn't have about my emotions, my sensibility, my love for the world. You know, and because if we think about it, most men, most of us, sadly, we are told not to cry, not to whine, not to fail. You're the man of the house. You're the god. Hey, you're 4-year-old. Here's a gun. Go and have fun. It's like it's creating this horrible, horrible, horrible God complex, Superman complex that turns you, in most of the time, into a monster. And sometimes you, if you're in a position of power, whether it's a CEO or a president of certain countries, it's very, very dangerous to have this type of individual because they don't get it. And I feel empathy for them. I want to tell them, like, you know, we had a meeting last night with our Rotary E-Club of World Peace. And this gentleman was saying, you know, the best thing to say to Trump is to say, I love you. And I thought about that. And it's funny because when he got elected, I wanted to tell him I love you. Now it's hard for me, you know, after a year and a half. But as of last night, Trump, I love you. See, we can do it. And really, these are the three only words that create something. I love you. You know, the alternative that we hear all the time these days, and by the way, left or right, CNN or Fox, is I you. And that destroy everything. That destroy communication, that destroy hope, that destroy life. So we need to retrain ourselves, rethinking who we are. And who we are is divine creature of love. Very simple. You know, when I've got 3 boys, now some of them are starting to be manipulated by the violence surrounding the Fortnite games, the violence on TV, the guns, but you know, when they were little boys, they were just pure creature of love. So it starts with each of us making sure that we rebuild these communities of love because we have let them dissolve and destroy, and that's why we're in the situation we are today.
Have your boys watched Femme?
Yes, and actually it's funny because when I did these movies, I made them for mainly mature people like us. But at each screening that we do, obviously a lot of parents bring their kids, and the kids get it. We try to make them as accessible as possible. And again, a young child is super smart. You know, don't underestimate anybody. That's a thing. You know, like I was saying in my promo reel, there are no idiots on this planet. There are people who have been put into a box to believe they are idiots, to believe they are a slave. That doesn't exist. That's manipulation. And most of the time, sadly, it's male manipulation. So it's about time to, I think the challenge of the 21st century, ultimate challenge is about liberating the mind. 21st century was focused on legislation and laws to liberate the body, abolition of slavery, and almost, giving back equal right to women. So we did a lot about the physical body. Now we have to deal with the spiritual intellectual and emotional body. One mind free, the world is free.
Thank you. I think everyone agrees with that. Yeah. Okay. So Kim, I think we're all impressed by the history of AAUW, which is nearly 140 years old. And you spoke about some of the fantastic legacy that the association has. So in today's current climate, where we see this assault on women and women's rights in so many ways, some obvious, some more nuanced, what do you feel are some of your current challenges and goals?
Yeah, great question. So first and foremost, I think we're always optimists. So I think that you could sometimes feel like getting to fetal position. If you're like me and you have insomnia in the middle of the night and you read your Twitter feed, it can make you want to suck your thumb again. But I think in terms of our goals and opportunities ahead, women are now, look, the work that AUW has been doing since 1881, women now make up the majority. 56% of people pursuing a community college degree or a four-year degree in this nation are women. That's progress, friends. But guess what's not progress? When women are taking on disproportionate amount of student loan debt, when their first job, they're earning on average 20% less than their male colleagues, when they haven't been tooled with the right resources to negotiate on behalf of themselves, or they're dealing with misogyny, whether it's implicit or unconscious or conscious. So we have to ensure that we are, I think, very much to what Emmanuel just said, the goal here needs to be on not just passing policies and laws. Friends, we passed the Civil Rights Act in '64. How are we doing on racism today? So we passed, the Equal Pay Act, and if it was current, I'd still wear a bouffant and a short corduroy miniskirt. We have to update our policies and laws, but policies and laws alone are not going to take care of changing our environment. So where our opportunities are, I think, for AUW is ensuring we're continuing working on education and training, on economic security for all, and on leadership for all with true equity and parity. That said, it's not going to happen just from laws and policies. We actually need to work with human beings' hearts and minds and help them to understand by lifting up women and girls, you're lifting up everyone, and that it's a great ROI, whether you're in a Fortune 500 or you're in a small nonprofit with 2 staff people. Productivity goes up, attrition goes down, and ROIs occur. So our big work is going to be working with individuals, with educational institutions, employers, and with government to ensure we're moving forward.
Fantastic. So I do have a couple more questions, but I want to first open up and then we'll perhaps come back to my questions if there's time. So let's see if there are any questions from the audience. And please keep your questions brief so that we have time to get a few in and for our honorees to respond. Is there a mic that's in the audience, or shall we pass around one of ours?
Hold on to yours. Hold on to yours. Hold on. Can I just remember so that my... Yeah. Yes. You want to stand up and... Here you go.
My name is Pam Tarr. I'm so grateful to be here. Of course, I agree with the grassroots approach being the most important way to approach women on all sorts of things. But I was so happy that Emmanuel brought up the ERA. And I know its laws don't solve every problem, but if we pass the ERA in its simple form the way it is now, equal pay would be the law. And so I'm a little confused why so many women's organizations and organizations that support women are not trying harder to pass the ERA, because there's only, I guess we just had 2 new states ratify it, and we hypothetically only need 1 more. So to me, as someone who rallied for the ERA decades ago, I would just love to see it pass, and I wondered why there isn't more of an effort to get it done.
Yeah, I think if it's okay, I can grab that real quick. No, it is fundamentally important to who we are and to have those laws in place. No question about it. And Virginia could very much ratify this year. But there are going to be, in terms of when it was written and what will need to happen to ensure it can take place. So yes, equal pay would be the law of the land, but how do you prove it, right? And so much of this, we have to be working. I want to just clarify something. It's not that we're only working at a grassroots level. We're always working at a federal and international level, at a state level, at a grassroots level, and up and down and back and forth. That's how this organization works. The coalition that we have of women's organizations, equity organizations, and very importantly, human and civil rights organizations. Because this isn't just about women, friends. This is about human and basic civil rights and dignity. So we're part of the Leadership Conference. I'm really a proud board member at the Leadership Conference. We are working on championing behind ERA and passing it. Our members for AUW in Virginia are knocking on doors every single week about ERA. So it's critically important, but I want to be clear, it's not going to be a single toggle switch that will solve all of our problems. So that's the big thing, is we've got to be pulling on a lot of different levers at the same time.
If I can just add to that, one of the things that also has been hindering it is that over 90% of the population of the country think that it's already been passed. So anybody, anytime you can get the word out to let people know, no, this hasn't been passed yet. And if you know somebody in one of the other states that hasn't yet ratified it, such as Virginia, let them know. Tell them their voice is needed.
Yeah, I have a quick question. It's maybe not the answer so quick, but how do you think the world would change if there was more gender balance in politics?
Okay, what we'll do is take 2 or 3 and then come back to the panel. So gender balance in politics, how would the world change? The gentleman at the back. No? Okay. There's,
Sorry, we try to get a couple questions at once.
yeah, I want to take 2 or 3. Do you
great.
have, no, with the black shirt? Yeah.
My question is this. It actually is a little bit different. And I'm Aaron Rodriguez. I actually came as a part of Project Cella. But I'm actually a teacher. And we have a group that we started called Teens Creating Peace. And we're having a peace conference and a women's conference. And so I'd like to have you all a part of our conference. So that's my question. So I will get in touch with you. And I would love to do a selfie with all of you too.
Done deal.
Okay. All right, which granted.
Questions?
Who is next? That one there, yeah. Where, yeah, you, yeah, that one there.
Quick question. The fastest growing prison population in the U.S. is now women. And the rise of women in prison, it goes up when the economy goes down, because it's generally crimes, economic crimes. And the bigger inequality quotient in this country is actually between the rich and the poor. And that we have the biggest gap between the wealthy and the poorest of all the industrial countries in the world. And so I'm always cautious when talking about equality, gender equality in relation to, you know, if poor women get paid the same as poor men, they're still poor. And so I wanted to know how you talk about that and how you tackle that, because they're interconnected, just as all the SDGs are interconnected. It's very interconnected. Thank you.
Thanks, great question. We'll take one more. There's a hand there, yeah.
Hello, it's Ruby Gillian from the National Association of Social Work, representing the state of California for the Tech Council. Yay! We all have these things. We all have technology. So how are we going to use technology to empower, advocate, and engage in social justice? We have those global goals there. NASW also has those goals too, but we work as separate entities. We have the same goals.
Okay, what is the question?
Exactly.
How are we using technology to empower ourselves and how to work as a collaborative process?
Great, thanks. Okay, so let's take those 3. The first one was, how would the world change if more women were in politics? Women in prison growing, the class divide, the economic divide, and then how can we use technology to collaborate and to do more? Okay, so you can choose any of those or all of them. All right. Just be brief.
Okay. Well, briefly, as far as politics is concerned, there's a belief that, oh, all we need is a whole bunch of women and everything will be fine. But if you look at the women who have been in politics, in power, they have the same kind of, ratio of good to bad as the men. So it's not a given that if we have women in politics that everything's going to be peachy keen, because it's not. That being said, there are a lot of women who have done a lot of good things. And so if we have more women in politics, maybe we can get more things done that are more about humanity rather than the few, and more about love than about hate. So, we've just got to be careful about who we get into politics. And so, we do need more women in politics, but it's not, just like Kim said about the ERA, it's not a silver bullet for anything, but we do need more equality.
I would add on to Pauline to say one sector, and I am a big, I share space with Running Start that's training women so that they can potentially run for office at some point in their lives. But just one sector is not going to solve it either. And I'd bring you to, there's so much emphasis on women in elected positions and appointed positions and women in the C-suite in Fortune 500 or on corporate boards. And yet our nation's educational institutions and nation's nonprofits, including those working in international development and domestic development, get a pass, that we treat them all as the good guys and good gals doing that mission work. And sadly, the ladders have been broken and continue to be broken, friends. So look also within the own organizations you're working with to ensure that those boards have parity, that they are intersectional, and that they are representing our demography of our place and our geography and where we are, not just at elected officials and corporations. Because sadly, I know everybody in this room would raise their hands and say you probably had an amazing female teacher at some point in your educational career, correct? Yes? How many of you had a female principal? How many had a female dean, provost, president, or chancellor of their university? How many of your nonprofit boards are led by a woman, either in the executive director, CEO position, or on the board? So look in those other sectors as well as elected office, please.
And to add to that, 30% of college presidents are women. So if we're teaching our children, then let's teach them from the bottom up, and to let them know that they can see that there are role models. If they can't see that women can also have their choice of a career and make it to the top, then they lose out. The Girl Scouts did a study a few years ago that showed that when kids were asked when they were like 5 or 8 years old, there was no difference between how many of them were going to be successful between boys and girls. But by the time they were teenagers, young teenagers, already the girls were saying, no, I don't think so. They already knew that they were limited in what they were able to do.
No, I think, again, you have to remember what politic means. It comes from politis, which means for the people. So in this room, we are all politicians. Again, it's, global goals, local leaders. Well, it's local politicians. You are a politician. You have to run for your own office every day, like I said in my little speech, whether it's your school, whether it's your church, whether it's your UNA chapter, your Rotary Club. Just get involved, don't whine. Just stop the whining and act.
Okay, I think, Danielle? Great advice, thank you. Danielle, you had a question?
Back on what you just said. Sorry to point the finger. You had mentioned how the societal sort of change that takes place. And your illustration was at a younger age, you ask a boy and a girl equally what their aspirations or what their plans, their goals for the future, and how they perceive that, and how they perceive their ability to attain those. And a striking realization that you mentioned is the fact that then it begins to change as the females or the girls grow older, which clearly, this is not a revelation, but to me, it is a clear illustration of the role of societal sort of the way it is approached and it is taught. A lot of behavior, like Natty said, Madiba spoke about racism not being intrinsically in us. It's taught behavior. Same thing I would venture to say would be the situation with young girls. What I think, and again, not a unique idea, I'm sure. I think what is also important is to do all those things, to empower women's role in politics, to strengthen them in numbers. But above and beyond that, I think the respect for women's human rights, the respect for women's advancement, the respect of women's equality must also become the responsibility. It is vital that it becomes a responsibility that not of women exclusively and the few wonderful men around here and other examples. It needs to become a societal approach. It needs to become seen as crucially important and vital for the advancement of our society as a whole. Be it here, be it in our homeland, South Africa, men have a role, but it needs to become a societal tenor. Thank you, that was long.
So what I'm going to do, that's a great way that we can pose this question. I'm going to end this discussion with that question to each of you. What can we do to get more men involved and committed actively to the fight for gender equality? So I'll start with you, Camille.
Well, one of the things, I think it was Barry that mentioned Jennifer Siebel Newsom. She, in her movie Misrepresentation, she points out that children, as well as the rest of us, are bombarded every day through all kinds of media with the messages that the only value that the female has is to be young and beautiful, period. As long as we keep that message over and over and over and over again, then nothing changes, because the girls know that that's their value, that's the message they're getting, and the boys grow up thinking, oh, the women are just a commodity. So that's where we have to start to change it. We've got to change it in the everyday messages that are being sent all the way from young kids on up.
I agree. I mean, I've got 3 boys, age 4, 6, and 13. And I think that's when it starts. I mean, to turn a man into believing, not in terms of believing, in terms of realizing that gender equality is common sense, you have to start at age 4 and not tell them, hey, you're in charge, and here's a gun, and go and kill, and all this nonsense. So it starts at this young age, because if not, that man won't be able to even understand it, And a lady was talking about technology, and that's linked. Technology, it's just a tool, and it's a tool that can be doing great damages, as we can see it with most of our kids being addicted to these silly games full of violence that make them even more disconnected and even obviously less believing that they are equal. On the contrary, they are taught in the game, no, you have to shoot faster and you have to kill the other one. So it's a lot of work. But again, as I was saying in the promo reel, it starts with us, and it starts about working, waking up, leaving the couch, leaving the house, and doing the work. It's hard, but I have faith in us. We've been there for a few years, couple of years on this planet. We have a few more years ahead of us, so maybe our generation won't see it necessarily, but it's okay as long as the next one will see it. You know.
I think so much of this is about ensuring civil dialogue. So yes, while I agree we have to start young, also maybe not all of us are young chickens. Maybe we're not at 4, 6, or at my daughter's age of 10 or your older boy of 14, but we have to enhance our dialogues now. We passed the Civil Rights Act in '64 and said, great, we're done talking about racism. And I've traveled many times to your country of South Africa, and the conversation kept going on what we were doing to eradicate racism. And move forward. We stopped talking about it in public forums, and we stopped talking about equity. We said, oh, that was what those ladies in Gloria Steinem and those gals did back in the 60s and 70s. Yeah, 9 to 5, I get it. And we stopped having normalized conversations in every part of society. Now, luckily, really, with just almost 1 year ago when Me Too relaunched, we saw that harassment and discrimination in the workplace and in our educational institutions became above the fold in our nation's newspapers, and we're keeping it there. We're keeping it there because we have to continue to have the conversation, to bring male allies in. I have many liberal, good, wonderful, progressive men in my orbit in Washington, D.C., and even they say I've been guilty at standing by at the water cooler and letting sexism and harassing language occur because they were too afraid to speak up. So right now, every one of you can continue to speak up and have dialogues at your dining room table, out with friends, at Rotary, in your nonprofit organizations, in your schools, etc. The only way for us to move forward is to move the velvet curtain and actually use transparency, not opacity.
So folks, no excuses. We know what to do. Question ourselves, speak about these things, get up off the couch, all right? And we know where inspiration is, so stay in touch with these folks, get involved in the association, but it's up to every single one of us, and every single action, no matter how small, counts. So let's give a hand again to our wonderful panelists and honorees.
So as we approach the conclusion of the event, we'll have a few comments from Ginny here in just a moment. I just, again, want to thank Natalie for being out here from Washington. I want to thank our great Global Citizen Award recipients for the dedication you've shown in your lives. You didn't do your work in order to be here today. That's for sure. And thank you for the work you've done and that you'll continue to do. I want to just share, I started with a few comments with a quote from Ban Ki-moon, and recently current Secretary General Guterres mentioned in his comments on International Women's Day, all around the world, we need to listen to the women and girls who are rightly proclaiming their rights. We must join together as partners, women and girls, men and boys, to make gender equality a reality for all. Our aspirations for a world of peace, prosperity, dignity, and opportunity for all depend on it. So on this International Women's Day, on this 11th Global Forum, let us demand gender equality and women's empowerment together. Let us declare loud and clear, the time is now. So on that note, I'd like to reintroduce Ginny Hatfield. And by the way, on your table, the smaller tent card was one of the is one of the Sustainable Development Goals. Our intention was for you to tie the gender equality conversation with that Sustainable Development Goal and have some conversations about what you could do to be in action and bringing gender equality to that goal. So I invite you to continue to have that be in your thoughts as you go home today and look at what actions could you take to further the possibility of gender equality for all in relationship to that goal and to all the goals. Ginny?
Okay. Well, I hope you've had a good experience today and that the conversation has been stimulating and that it is thoughtful and that you will think upon what you've heard today from our global citizens and from the people that were sitting at your table. Hopefully this will help you to renew your efforts in making the world gender balanced. whether it be joining one of the organizations that were mentioned, mentoring someone, taking part in a peaceful demonstration, writing a letter to the editor, or just speaking out about injustice. And don't forget the most important thing, voting and letting your voice be heard, because now is not a time to be silent. Before we close, I would just like to thank the members of my committee who worked very hard in putting together this event. And they're listed in your program book, but I'd just like them to stand as I call their name and to be recognized. So if you'll just wait till everyone stands. Barry Simon, who you've met, and who actually I consider the co-chair of this event. This is Barry's brainchild. Judith Harris, Mel Boynton, who's not here today, Isabel Trudell, Barbara Gehagen-Mueller, Joy Adams, Dana Austin, Bettina Hausman, who's also traveling, Barbara Tibiani, Andres Gomez, John Bynum, Daria Makush, David Tuckman. Thank you all. In addition, I just want to add a few names that helped us produce this program the last 3 hours. Kent Speakman and Nathaniel, his cameraman, who are in the back. Kent. Ken Gruberman, over here, who made the magic appear on the screen and who taught me a lot about this stuff, which I didn't know, so I'm learning. William Kidston, our photographer, there he is. And I don't see her, she was coming today, but Paulette Stokes, oh, there she is, in the back, yay, Paulette. She is the lady responsible for designing our program today, and I can tell you she worked very long and hard and diligently, so I really appreciate that. Also, I just want to call up Erin a minute. We were supposed to do this a little bit earlier, but she is from Mayor Eric Garcetti's office, and she does have some certificates for our honorees.
Thanks. So Mayor Garcetti was able to join us by video, but I'll share with you that he's just across town right now, actually speaking at the 39th training of the Climate Reality Movement that's led by former Vice President Al Gore. So that's why he couldn't be with us today. But as we talk about the intersectionality of climate change and equity in particular, I think that makes sense for his priorities for today's speech. The mayor's taken a strong stance on gender equity, and I'm also proud to share that we'll have our second annual convening of the Status of Women and Girls Conference on October 12th. And in that afternoon forum, we're bringing 600 young girls from LAUSD schools together, and they'll be trained by the Moth Radio Hour, if you're familiar with that. And the Moth is going to be teaching these girls how to tell their story. And I think that that's really an important subset to talk about, is how we empower people to tell their story. We had a good cross-section of that today as folks shared their involvement, as well as from our leaders here on this panel. So with that, and on behalf of Mayor Eric Garcetti of the City of Los Angeles, I'd like to share these certificates with our award recipients. So. Pauline. And Natalie. Thank you. Thanks, Barry.
You're welcome. Well, I'd like to leave on an upbeat, and I think I found something that will give us all some good spirit as we leave the room today. It's a video clip of a UN Women song called One Woman, and it premiered on March 8th of 2013 for International Women's Day. So the theme, I think, is something we've talked about today. One woman together, we can do it all. We can do it, and we shall shine. So let's see it.
In Kigali, she wakes up, she makes sad choice. In Hanoi, Natal, Ramallah, in Tangier, she takes a breath, lifts up her voice. In Lahore, La Paz, Kampala, though she's half the world away. Something in me wants to say, we are one woman, you cry and I hear you. We are one woman, you hurt and I hurt too. We are one woman, your hopes are mine, and we shall shine. In one she speaks the truth. She reaches out, then teaches others how to. In Jaipur she gives her name. She lives without shame. In Manila, South Tambo, though we're different as can be, we're connected, she with me. We are one woman, your courage keep me strong. We are one woman, you sing, I sing along. We are one woman, your dreams are mine, and we shall shine. We shall shine. And one man he hears her voice. One man he fights her fight. Day by day he lets go the old ways. One woman at a time. Though she's half a world away, something in me wants to say, we are one woman, your victory sings our song. We are one woman, you rise when I stand tall. We are one woman, your world is mine, and we shall shine. Shine, shine, shine. We shall shine. Shine, shine, shine. We shall shine. Shine, shine, shine.
Thank you for everyone for being here, and safe travels.